Good evening, everyone. So, welcome back to Accounting Analytics session, day 5. And today we are going to discuss about k-nearest neighbor classifier. So, before we further proceed to KNN algorithm, let's understand what all we discussed in the previous sessions. So, we'll have a small recap, and we'll proceed further. So, as part of accounting analytics, we have discussed about various concepts like clustering and let me quickly write. So, we discussed what are the various applications of accounting analytics, right, using machine learning. So this is our first day, friends, and we understood how machine learning is useful in accounting. And the next day, we discussed about CRISP MLQ. So CRISP MLQ is a project management methodology which is used to solve any machine learning project. So whatever application you take, like it may be the classification of various risk, audit risk, and it can be like detection of anomalies and detection of fraud transactions and bookkeeping records, classification of bookkeeping records, and etc. Many, whatever application you take, whatever things you want to automate in the space of accounting using machine learning, we try to use the project management methodology called CRISP MLQ. So cross-industry standard process for machine learning with quality assurance and maintenance, right? This is the full form of that. And this is the second day we discussed it, friends. And on the third day, we discussed about, on the third day, we discussed about the EDA, exploratory data analysis, right? So it's all about data, right? These are the data stream technologies, machine learning algorithms and data science algorithms, data analysis. And as part of data, we can't use the raw data as it is, right? So we will be using the EDA part of the data, or simply we try to select some of the key features, some of the important features from the data, and we use them for modeling. Right, that is the exploratory data analysis. So which mainly includes the data cleaning and data wrangling, data munging, and many other techniques. So on day 4, we discussed about k-means clustering. So we started understanding what are the various types of machine learning, like supervised technique, unsupervised technique, and we understood about the k-means clustering. It is one of the popular unsupervised technique, friends, and which is used in accounting data. So whenever you don't know the output of a particular use case, we go with the k-means clustering, right? We go with the clustering, and one of the type of clustering is k-means clustering. And then today we are going to discuss about supervised learning. So in supervised learning, we can have various algorithms, and one algorithm today we are going to discuss is KNN, k-nearest neighbor, right? The classification technique using k-nearest neighbor. So this is the name of the algorithm, friends, and we can quickly look into it, right? And so one more time, I'm repeating, whenever we are trying to work with the supervised learning algorithms, we know the input data as well as the output data, right? We know both input data and output data. So the first few minutes, we will discuss what is KNN algorithm and what are the key concepts of it. And in the next half an hour, we'll try to understand what is KNN using a practical example, using a use case, and we will try to implement using IPython notebook in Google Colab, right? So yeah, let's quickly move into the topic, friends. So the name of the algorithm we are going to discuss is KNN classifier in simple, or in detail, we call it as k-nearest neighbor. So if I move on to the next slide, yeah, so this is our agenda. We will understand what is one neighbor, k neighbor, and also controlling the complexity in the KNN. And of course, the Euclidean distance. Yeah. Here we have one simple use case where we have the image classification. And of course, when we talk about the accounting, the data might be quite different, but for easy understanding, I have taken a very simple example. So whenever we have a handwritten digits, we can easily classify them, whether it belongs to a particular category or not. So is it belonging to category 1? So nothing but value 1, or to the category 2, where the value of the number is 2 or 3 or 4 or various other things, right? So we are trying to do image classification. And whenever we are talking about classification, it's all about categorical data, friends, right? It's about the categorical data. So your whatever column you're taking, whatever features you're taking, the data should be discrete in nature, right? So now let me directly go to the KNN, and then we will understand how it is able to classify it. So if you can understand here, I have taken 1 as the nearest neighbor, which means I'm taking k equal to 1. The value of k is equal to 1, right? So wherever a new point enters into my data. So if you observe in the given image, I have 2 kinds of data, right? 2 categories of data. One is the pink category, one is the blue category, in short. And now here I have a square. So, but even though I have given a pink color, but assume there is no color for it, maybe some black color. Now, how can I say that it belongs to a particular category? Right? Let's say this is one new point that have been entered, and we have to decide to which category this black square belongs to. Does it belongs to pink category or blue category? So we do it by using a distance measure. By using distance measure, we can say to which category it belongs to. Either it belongs to the pink category or the blue category. So in order to find out the distance, there are so many points. From which point I have to find the distance? Is it from this point to this point, or is it from blue, or is it from pink, or is it from this pink point? So to which point I have to consider distance, right? It's a question mark. It's a big question mark, right? So in this case, KNN helps us, friends, and especially the k value. So if you observe here, we have taken k value is equal to 1, which means I'm considering the one nearest neighbor. Only I'm considering one nearest neighbor. So here k is a hyperparameter. We can change the k value in order to improve our accuracy of the model. So machine learning is all about building the models so that we can predict in the future. So machine learning is also called as predictive modeling. So in this predictive modeling, we are trying to predict. So whenever a new point, let's say in this case, here it is a black point. If a black point is entering into my data, a new point is coming in. I want to tell to which category it belongs to. Is it belong to blue or it belongs to pink? So I've taken a very simple example. So I've taken only 2 categories. But in real time, if you consider the real time data, sometimes you can also have 10 categories, 100 categories, 1000 categories. So where the complexity in the algorithm increases, right? So from this slide, you need to understand that here k is an experimental value. And here we are trying to give a label, give a name for a new point based on the distance. So now, as you can see, I have taken k equal to 1. So I'm considering the one nearest neighbor. So nearest neighbor means which has the very less distance. So this new square is having very less distance with this pink point. So it is called nearest neighbor. I'm considering the first nearest neighbor, one nearest neighbor. So if I move on to the next slide, so I have 2 nearest neighbors, right? Because I've taken value 2, k equal to 2, which means I'm considering a distance between 2 points, right? So from blue as well as from pink, right? I'll consider the 2 nearest points. Now you may get a doubt that, Sandhya, which point I have to take? So should I take blue or pink? Now from these 2 points, whichever is having the very less distance, so that label we give it to the square. Again, it is pink, right? And then again, if I move on to the next slide, I've taken the 3 nearest neighbor, right? I'm taking the 3 points. So here I have a point X. So to which category X belongs to? Is X belongs to blue category or pink category? We try to take now the average of the distances. So I'll calculate the distance between, let me name them as point A, and this as point B, and this as point C. Now I try to find out the distance between point A and X. So let's say this is X. Right? So point A and X, point B and X, and I'll find out the average distance. And I'll tell that. Then again, I'll find out the distance between the point X and C. Now I'll compare the distances. Average of blue distance, average of the pink distance. So whichever is having the very less distance, I'll give that category to my X, to my point X. So by this time, you might be understanding that KNN only works if a new point comes in. Unless and until a new point comes in, it doesn't work. So maybe in the first slide, you might have observed that KNN is called as the lazy learner or simply lazy algorithm, because it can work or it tries to build the model only if a new data point comes in. Unless and until new point comes in, it doesn't work. So it sits idle, right? So that is the KNN algorithm, friends. And if we have 8 nearest neighbors, so again we'll try to take the average distance from the 8 points from this X to the 8 other points, right? To all other points. So all pink points, I'm taking the average, and also to all the blue points, I'll be taking the average distance. So whoever average distance is very less, I'll give the label accordingly, right? This is the K nearest neighbor. So for this distance measure, what kind of distance I'm using? And here, the most popular distance measure we will be using is the Euclidean distance. So let me quickly move to that slide, friends. Give me a minute. So we will be using the Euclidean distance. So for example, let me just, So we use a Euclidean distance, which is nothing but the shortest distance between 2 points. I hope all of you have studied basic mathematics in your schooling, right? Maybe in 10th standard or 9th standard, where we discuss some algorithms like Pythagoras program or distance between the 2 points. All those concepts we are bringing in now for this K nearest neighbor. And as I said, we are using a Euclidean distance, which is nothing but the distance between the shortest distance between the 2 points. For example, here I have 2 points, P and Q. So let me say P is a point, Q is a point, right? P is a point, Q is a point. Let me write the names. P and Q. So now the distance between both of them, distance between P and Q, we have to find out. So the shortest distance between P and Q is called as the Euclidean distance. And this is the direct straight line is the shortest distance, right? But I can have a longest distance as well. So I can move in this way. I can move maybe in this way. But I'm not going all these ways. I'm just going with the direct distance, the shortest distance. Right? This is the shortest distance. And now it is given as square root of P1 minus Q1 whole square plus P2 minus Q2 whole square. So what are these P1 and P2, friends? So let me quickly write them. So we have the point P1 comma P2. And here also I have the point Q1 comma Q2. So these are the 2 points, friends. So I'm taking P1 minus Q1 whole square plus P2 minus Q2 whole square. Square root will give me the Euclidean distance. And I can find out the distance between the 2 points. So when I'm trying to find out the distance between nearest neighbors. So if I say I want 2 nearest neighbors, so then I'll be taking the 2 points. Let's say this is point R. And from point R is the new point. Let's say R is the new point that entered into our data. So we will find out distance between R and Q, R and P. So whichever is the shortest distance, we will give the R as that particular category. So let's say R is very less distance from Q. So we say that R is Q. So this is the basic distance measure, friends, that we use for the data. So this is the theory part about the KNN. Let's quickly implement it. So we'll understand very well when we implement KNN algorithm for the a simple data. So for that data, today I'm going to consider the audit data. So I hope as part of accounting, you all know about audit, right? And so when you all know about audit, you might be also knowing about the audit risk. So today we are going to classify the audit risk, right? So if I speak about the audit risk, it's all about, or it is defined as the risk that the auditor expresses in an inappropriate audit opinion, right? When the financial statements are materially misstated. And also the audit risk is a function of risk of material misstatements and also the detection risk. There are again different types of audit risk, friends, like inherent risk, detection risk, and the control risk. So it is classified broadly into 3 primary categories, right? It is broadly classified into 3 primary categories: inherent risk, detection risk, and the control risk. So based on these risk values, we will try to classify if my audit data is a risk or not. So let's quickly discuss about what are these risks, right? And how can we identify them? So first, and okay, let me quickly write them, friends. So we have audit risk, which are of 3 types. So the 3 types of audit risk are, let me quickly write them. So we have my bad. So I mistakenly opened that. Okay. So we have inherent risk, right? And we also have control risk. Right? And we also have detection risk. Right? So there are 3 types of audit risk, friends. They are inherent risk, control risk, and the detection risk. So let's quickly understand how can we identify them and what are these risks all about. So we'll quickly look into the data, and we are not going to talk about any mathematical formulas, friends, but rather we'll discuss about what is an audit risk and what are its different types. And also we'll see a simple KNN model to classify this risk, right? To classify whether it is a risk or not based on the risk value, right? So as we already know that, so audit risk is the risk that financial statements are materially incorrect, even though the audit opinion states that financial reports are free of any material misstatements. So the actual purpose of this audit is to reduce the audit risk, friends, to an inappropriately lower level through the adequate testing and sufficient evidence, right? So why we are doing all of this? Because creditors or the investors and any other stakeholders rely on the financial statements in any business, right? So audit risk may carry legal liabilities for a particular certified public accountancy, right? Accountancy firms like performing the audit work. So from this, over the course of an audit, an auditor makes the inquiries, and they can also perform various tests on the general ledger and also supporting documentations. So if any errors are caught during this testing, the auditor requests the management to propose the correcting the general entries, right? So at the conclusion, finally, the audit, after any corrections are posted, an auditor provides a written opinion as to whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement, or auditing firms carry a malpractice insurance to manage audit risk, and also the potential legal liabilities, right? So there are, again, as I said, we have three types of audit risk, and also there are two components for audit risk, friends. I said that there are three types of audit risks, but still we do have two important components of audit risk. They are the material misstatement and also the detection risk. For example, there is a large sporting goods store, right, needs an audit performed, and that CPO firm is assessing the risk of auditing the store's inventory. So in this particular risk, for example, if you take about the first component, material misstatement. So material misstatement risk is the risk that the financial reports are materially incorrect before the audit is performed. And also, if you consider this CPO firm that we discussed earlier, in this case, the material refers to a dollar amount that is larger enough to change the opinion of a financial statement reader. And the percentage or a dollar amount is also sometimes subjective. So if the sporting goods store inventory balance is around 1 million, which is incorrected by maybe 100,000, a stakeholder reading the financial statement may consider the material amount. So the risk of material misstatement is even higher if there is the believed to be insufficient internal controls. So which is also considered as one of the fraud risk, right? So as I told earlier, so when we are talking about particular analytics, it is a combination of other analytics as well. So in the audit risk, we also encountered fraud risk, right? When we have the material misstatement. And if I talk about the detection risk, so detection risk is the risk that the auditor's procedures do not detect a material misstatement. For example, if you consider an auditor needs to perform a physical count of inventory and compare the results to the accounting records. So the work is performed to prove the existence of the inventory, right? So if the auditor's test sample for the inventory count is insufficient to extrapolate out the entire inventory, the detection risk is very high, or it is even higher. So yeah, these are the various components of audit risk, friends. And let's quickly also understand what is an inherent risk is all about. So if we speak about the inherent risk, so in inherent risk, it is one of the type of audit risk which refers to the susceptibility of an assertion to a misstatement. So the material misstatement component is included in the inherent risk. So it can be due to an error or a fraud. So of course, frauding is also included in the inherent risk, friends. So that could be a material individually or in a combination with the other misstatements. So before consideration of any related controls. And also, there are chances of errors in some activities out of multiple activities performed, right? So when we talk about the inherent risk, there are chances of error in some activities out of the multiple activities performed or the same action multiple times. For example, there are chances of non-recording purchases transactions from a vendor having multiple transactions or recording the same with the wrong amount, right? So simply, in simple terms, we can say that it is a level of risk in place in order to achieve the entity's objectives and before actions are taken to alter the risk impact or the livelihood. And how can we identify them, friends? How can we identify the inherent risk? So an auditor knowledge and the judgment of the industry or the corporate transactions and the company's assets can help to determine the inherent risk. So companies with the complicated business structures and the transactions tend to have more inherent risk, right? So this is how we can identify the inherent risk, friends. And next, let's understand about control risk. So what is a control risk? What is the control of a risk is? So it is usually considered as the probability that the financial statements are materially misstated, friends. So almost the inherent risk and the control risk are both comes under the material misstatements. So as we discussed, audit risk is of two types, right? I mean, audit risk has two components. They are material misstatement and the detection. So detection of the misstatements. So when I talk about the material misstatements, they consider inherent risk and the control risk. So we understood just now about the inherent risk. Now, if I talk about control risk, as I said, it is the probability that financial statements are materially misstated. So it can be, these material misstatements can be due to failures in the controls used by a business. So when there are significant control failures, a business is more likely to experience undocumented asset losses. So which means that is, that its financial statements may reveal a profit when there is actually a loss. So which can be called as the control risk, right? So the managers of the businesses are responsible for designing, implementing, and maintaining a system of controls. And also, this is an adequate for preventing the loss of assets. And it is not easy to maintain a solid system, friends, right? Since the system must be periodically altered to fit the ongoing changes in the business processes and also as well as to deal with the entirely new business transactions. Right. Also, management may avoid implementing certain controls because it is time taking and on the grounds that they are too expensive. And also, they interfere with the smooth flow of transactions that impact the customers. So the monitoring of the controls is a key task for a company's internal audit department in order to avoid the control risk, right? So when control issues are found, they communicate these problems to management and the audit committee with recommendations for the improvements to be made, or else we will undergo this control risk, right? So this is about the control risk, friends, and so we can easily identify that in the while we are auditing. So again, once again, if we repeat, audit control risk is about the material misstatements due to the error or the fraud. It can be material or individually, or the combination of the both material and the individual misstatements that are detected by the company's internal control. That is called as the control risk. So let's quickly understand what is the detection risk is all about, right? Yeah, detection risk is the risk that the auditor will not detect a misstatement, friends, that exist in an assertion that could be the material either individually or when aggregated with the other misstatements. So if we look into the details of the detection risk, so let me just highlight this so that you'll understand we are discussing the detection risk. So if I talk about in detail about the detection risk, so auditors should aim to keep the detection risk at an acceptable level. And these are the three main components of detection risk, friends. Like, applying an audit procedure incorrectly. For example, when an auditor applies the wrong acceptable ratio, and when using ratios to evaluate the face value accuracy of an account balance. So this is something about the detection risk, right? So in simple words, detection risk is the chance that auditor will fail to find the material misstatements that exist in the entity's financial statements. When the auditor himself fails to detect the risk, we call it as the detection risk, right? So these misstatements may be due to either fraud or error. So again, fraud comes into picture, right? Yeah, auditors make use of audit procedures to detect these misstatements. So, however, because of the nature of the audit procedure, some detection risk will always exist. For example, let's take a simple example. Auditors often sample a certain type of company transaction because examining every transaction is impractical, right? There can be huge number of transactions are happening. Consider, the companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, huge number of transactions might be happening every day. So increasing the sample size can reduce the detection risk. So in this case, we are using inferential statistics. We are considering a sample and identifying the risk, right? So if you increase the sample size, it can reduce the detection risk, but some risk will always remain. And detection risk is one of the three elements of the audit risk, friends, right? It can be, it is one of the type of audit risk again. So again, if we look into the details of detection risk can reach unacceptable levels when an auditor fails to implement the correct audit procedures and implements the right procedures incorrectly. Whenever we are incorrectly implementing the right procedures, we come across the detection risk, friends. And it's important for auditors to assess both control and inherent risk first. Then only we go with the detection risk, right? In order to bring the total audit risk to an acceptable level. So, however, it's unlikely to an auditor, he can eliminate detection risk entirely because most auditors will never be able to examine every single transaction. So that makes up a financial statement. So instead of this, auditors should aim to keep the detection risk at an acceptable level. So there are three main components of detection risk, friends, like as we discussed. So the first component is applying an audit procedure incorrectly. For example, when an auditor applies the wrong acceptable ratio when using ratios to evaluate the face value accuracy of an account balance. And if you talk about the second component, that is incorrect audit testing method. So choosing an audit testing method that isn't it right for the type of the financial account being audited. So if we take an example, testing for accuracy of the invoice rather than the occurrence of particular sale. And if you talk about the third component, misinterpreting the results of the audit or just evaluating the results wrongly, right? And also, a common mistake that auditors make is to conclude that the detected misstatement is trivial. And sometimes a misstatement that is trivial is 1 unit of a company may become material when it is aggregated over multiple business units and making a significant impact on the company's financial statements. So detection risk may be higher in regions where regulatory bodies are relatively ineffective. So detection risk is also higher when the relationship between the auditors and the audited entities employees become cozy, right? So cultural differences can also increase the, or sometimes it can also decrease the risk among the countries and regions around the world. And there are again the number of audit procedures, different number of audit procedures that auditors use to minimize the detection risk, including the classification testing, completeness testing, value testing, and occurrence testing. So there are different procedure, friends. These are the procedures: classification testing, completeness testing, valuation testing, and the occurrence testing, right? So this is the basic understanding of inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. So if you talk about three of them, if we compare three of them, inherent risk is always present and it is specific to the company based on its given industry and business environment. And inherent risk is likelihood that a material misstatement exists in the company's financial statements based on these given factors. But when you talk about the control risk, so when you talk about the control risk, it is the risk that the company's own internal controls itself will be able to prevent, detect, or even correct the material misstatements or errors that are present in the financial statements. So if the auditors know the company being audited, being audited has poor internal control process, this risk will be assessed higher. So both inherent risk and the control risk will increase the level of audit procedures that are required in order to reduce the detection risk to an acceptable level. So because audit risk is comprised of all three elements, right? All three elements that are inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. So if both control risk and the inherent risk are high, detection risk will need to be minimized through increased audit procedures. So if inherent risk and the control risk are both at low, the level of audit procedures required to be lower, right? So this is about the types of risk, friends. Let's understand if inherent risk is high, if control risk also high, then what will be the detection risk? Let's understand by forming a simple tabular column. So just give me a minute, I'll be opening the Excel file. And once after we understood this, we can move into the programming part. So let me quickly open the iPad, an Excel file. And I want to quickly write few things. So I want to give it as acceptable audit risk. And for the next column, I want to name it as inherent risk. And the next column is control risk. And the next column will be planned detection risk. And the next column would be audit procedures, or simply we can call it as evidence required. Right? So these are the various column, friends, that we are going to discuss today. Right? So if I say that acceptable audit risk, or just let me simply bold them up. And I just want to zoom it so that you all can see properly. Yeah. So if acceptable audit risk is high, then if suppose inherent risk is low, and if control risk is also low, then the planned detection risk will be high, friends. And also the audit procedures will be low, right? And for suppose if the acceptable audit risk is medium, the inherent risk is also medium, and control risk is also medium, then plan detection risk as well as the audit procedures will be medium. And in case the acceptable audit risk is low, so the inherent risk and the control risk are also low, your plan detection risk will be medium, right? But the audit procedures will be medium again, right? But in case acceptable audit risk is low and the inherent risk is high, and also the control risk is high, the planned detection risk will be low, right? And whereas the audit procedure risk will be high, right? So this is the basic understanding of risk, friends. So always we will be having inherent risk and the control risk, and finally we will be planning our detection risk, right? So this is basic understanding of various risks that are present in the audit data, friends. These are the types of audit risks. So let's try to quickly go into our data and understand the data. Then we'll try to implement KNN algorithm to find out whether the given data is having a risk or not, based on the inherent risk, control risk, and the detection risk. So let me quickly go back to my Chrome. And so if you see, I have taken a data from 777 firms, friends, that are from 46 different cities of a state that are listed by various auditors. So I'm not relieving the complete data, because we have non-disclosure agreement with all of them. And from the field work we have taken, and the target offices are listed in 14 different sectors. So let me walk you through the data. So we have the risk and the various loss probabilities. And finally, if we talk about the types of risk, we do have inherent risk, control risk, and the detection risk. So finally, we are computing the audit risk. I'm not going into too much of mathematical calculations, friends. You might get a doubt how these are all computed. So I haven't concentrated on how they are computed, because we are not talking about the entire accounting today, but rather we are just taking that data and we are trying to classify whether it is a risk or not. So 1 means it's a risk, 0 means not a risk. 1 means at a higher risk, 0 means no risk, right? So this is what I'm trying to classify today by using KNN algorithm. So which firm is risky, which firm is not under an audit risk, we want to classify by considering all this input data. So let me quickly move into the IPython notebook, friends. So as we have discussed earlier, this is a Google Collaboratory, and using this Google Collaboratory, we are building the notebooks, Python notebooks, or simply IPython notebooks, IPYNB extension. Yeah, so this is the business understanding. And then I'm trying to import the various libraries like Pandas, Matplotlib, sklearn, and NumPy. So these are the basic libraries that we are going to use today, friends. And quickly I loaded the data. So after loading the data, I'm trying to look into the head of the data. For example, let me run this. So I want to give a simple print statement so that we can view the data. So I think it's still connecting, friends. It's mounting the drive and connecting. Yeah, so once after we load the data, we can view the df.head. So I've given a random name df. You can give any name, but always try to make sure you give the relevant names. And we can quickly print the df.head, which means it will print the first 5 rows. Indexing in Python starts from 0. So you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. First 5 rows of data, right? And our output column is risk column, a final column, right? So that I'm giving with y. So y is equals to risk and x is equals to remaining all other columns except risk column. And then we have splitting of the data. So as we know, we need to split the train and test data, right? Whenever we are trying to build a model, first we build the model with train data, and then we evaluate using the test data, right? So for that, I'm using a simple library from sklearn, and I'm using a function train test split. So x train x test y train y test is equal to train test split of xy, and the test size is equals to 0.25. So which means 25% of the data I'm considering as a test data, and the remaining 75% of the data I'm considering as a train data. And next again, I have to transform the data, right? Pre-process the data. As part of pre-processing, I haven't included much of the steps because we are more concentrating on the modeling part, but maybe that lead to another session understanding about the complete data cleaning process. But for now, I just included one simple technique called standardization. So standardization is we are standardizing the entire data so that the data forms under bell curve or simply the Gaussian distribution. So I've defined the standard scalar and I've said standard scalar dot fit underscore transform of train data. So I'm trying to apply the standardization technique for both train data and the test data, right? And then if I quickly scroll down, so here comes our model, KNN model. So again, sklearn is a library that has the k nearest neighbor classifier function, k neighbors classifier function, right? And I have defined the k neighbors classifier with number of neighbors as 10. So as I said, this is an experimental number and it is called as the hyperparameter. So you can give any value. So randomly I have given 10 for today. So which means a point, whenever a new point comes in, so whenever the test data goes into the model, then it will try to find out, or it will try to consider the nearest 10 points around it, which is having the least distance, right? It will find out the average distance and assign that particular category to it. So what are here the two categories that we are considering, friends? Either risk 1 or risk 0. So 1 means there is a risk, 0 means there is no risk. So quickly, I'm calling the classifier dot fit. Classifier dot fit will inside that I'm passing the train data, x train and y train, right? So once after we fit the data, we predict it. We predict the output. So let's do one thing. Let's try to run our program. So I think we have run till the second cell. Then let me quickly run the third cell. So you can actually view the data, friends. Let me quickly print. So print the x underscore train dot head. So my bad, I just want to print the, it's not a data frame. Yes, sorry, my bad. So you can see these are the values. So you can actually select any particular row maybe. So it shows 0 for now. So now you can see the other data, right? At particular 8th position, you can see the data, right? So let me quickly delete. And then we are trying to standardize the data, friends. Yes, so after standardizing, this is how the data is. And then, so we are trying to build a k nearest neighbor classifier. So yeah, once after we run, it may take little time, friends. So that's the reason I'm not going to run this for now. But yeah, finally we get the confusion matrix. So before that, if you see classifier dot fit, inside the fit I'm passing the train data, x train and y train. And now we have the y predicted. So y predicted is equals to classifier dot predict. I'm using a function called predict. And inside the predict, I'm passing the test data. Now it will do the predictions and it will give us the output, right? So let me print the predictions. Let me try by changing the number of neighbors as very less number so that we can easily run quickly. So I want to change the number of neighbors as maybe as 5, and then we'll run it. So you can see, friends, we were able to build the model and I just printed my predictions. So in the test data, first value is 1, second value is 1, third value is 0, which means first one is the 1, second one is 1, and the third one is 0. Risk, not a risk, not a risk, risk, not a risk, not a risk. So we have couple of ones and zeros, and you can see we have 121. True positives. So this is a confusion matrix, friends. We are using confusion matrix from sklearn to evaluate our model k nearest neighbor. So there are different types of evaluations we can do. So for categorical data, we use confusion matrix. But if it is a numerical data or the continuous data, or when we apply any regression techniques, we go with the root mean square error or mean square error, mean absolute percentage error, and many other techniques. But when it is categorical, we directly go with the confusion matrix. So where we have the true positives and true negatives, as well as the false positives and false negatives. So today we have got the 124 and 70. So 124 true positives and 170 70 true negatives. So this is our data, friends. And then yeah, this is our the predicted data. So if you want to look into the actual data, I hope this also looks pretty much same. So we got like almost 100% accuracy. Yeah. So let me quickly run this. So you can see this is my actual predicted data and the actual data. Right, and finally, once after we get the results, we can quickly plot them. So for the plotting purpose, I'm using a simple listed color map, right? And I'm trying to use matplotlib .pyplot as PLT, and I'm trying to draw a simple plot. So yeah, this is how we got, and the green indicates the risk and the red indicates not a risk. And then we have one more plot for the test results. These are for the trained results, these are for the test results, and you can see it is like almost matching, but some error is there. So if we try to increase the more number of neighbors, so our accuracy will increase soon, right, by changing the hyperparameters. So let me recap what all we discussed today, friends. So we have discussed about the KNN algorithm, K nearest neighbor algorithm, where whenever a new point comes in, our K nearest neighbor algorithm will try to find the distance between the points and assigns its category. And to find out the distance, it uses a distance measure called Euclidean distance. Nothing but the direct distance or the shortest distance between the 2 points, right? And yeah, this is what we discussed, and then we moved on to a simple example by talking about the audit risk, because our problem statement completely deals with the audit risk. We understood what is an audit risk, what are different components of the audit risk, and what are the different types of audit risk, right? Like inherent risk, control risk, and the detection risk. So in this use case, we have taken like almost we have considered the audit data from 777 firms which are present in 46 different cities, and they also belongs to 14 different sectors or simply 14 different domains. And finally, we have collected the audit data and we classified if their data is a risky data, audit risk data, or not an audit risk data. So that is what we understood today, friends. And then, so let me quickly open. Yeah. So in order to work with the any kind of analytics, you need a basic understanding of Python programming, friends. So Python is one of the prerequisites for any analytics. So not only accounting analytics, it can be banking, supply chain fraud, or whatever it is. And even when you want to work with the machine learning or artificial intelligence, you need to have basic understanding of Python. So we already have conducted many free sessions for Python as part of 360DigiTMG. And so there is one particular series called Tame the Python. So you can quickly go to our YouTube channel and you can just Google search the YouTube and search the 360DigiTMG, go to the playlist and you can just scroll down to find the Tame the Python programming sessions. So these are again the YouTube videos recorded, but there is a golden chance if you want to join the live Python sessions. They are happening in the next month on 11th July, friends. So on 11th July, again, as part of our free courses, we are conducting the Tame the Python sessions. So I request all of you to join and make a use of it, right? It is part of our Skill Next program. We are trying to train as many number of people as possible. So I request all of you to join this particular course. You just need to subscribe to our YouTube channel and we will be sending the links in the YouTube comments. So you can quickly register there and attend the Python sessions. So which will help you a lot in your analytics journey, especially accounting analytics journey. Right. So I hope all of you understood. And this is one thing I want to emphasize all of you to subscribe to the channel and register for the SkillNext program for the Python programming to understand the Python programming. And also there is also one more interesting thing in 360DigiTMG. We have something called as mind map, friends. Sorry, yeah. So 360DigiTMG mind map. And as we are discussing about various machine learning algorithms, you can quickly go to the machine learning using Python and R, and you can see all the algorithms that we are discussing. So as part of accounting analytics, we are discussing about we have already discussed about unsupervised technique, the clustering technique. So in clustering, we have the hierarchical and non-hierarchical. So we discussed in the previous session about non-hierarchical clustering, K-means clustering, right? And today we discussed about K nearest neighbor, KNN model. So you just need to double click on that and the mind map will expand and you can quickly understand the various points, right? So as we discussed today, KNN model classify the new data point based on the K nearest data points. So this is what we discussed and these are the steps that we used for the KNN model for the implementation. So I request all of you to quickly go to the 360DigiTMG website and you can quickly open the mind map and you can practice it. So whenever you are preparing for interviews, this will help you a lot. So this is all from my side, friends. And thank you so much for attending Accounting Analytics session day 5. So tomorrow we'll meet again and we'll discuss one more new algorithm. Yeah, Thank you all. Have a great day.